Puerto Rico. The curly-haired girl came to the emergency room with fever, aches, and signs of dehydration, common indications of many childhood illnesses. But the 9-year-old, pale and listless beneath her Pokémon blanket, looked sicker than most children and exhibited no respiratory symptoms. She could only whimper as a pediatrician stroked her hair and softly questioned her in Spanish. The sharp-eyed doctor suspected dengue, a disease that is often missed but is now exploding around the world. The girl, Genesis Polanco Marte, is among a record 10 million people who have fallen ill with dengue so far this year, an unprecedented surge that scientists say is fueled in part by climate change. Soaring global temperatures have accelerated the life cycles and expanded the ranges of the mosquitoes that carry dengue, helping spread the virus to roughly 1 in every 800 people on the planet in the past 6 months alone. An influx of patients has overwhelmed hospitals from Brazil to Bangladesh, recalling the worst days of the coronavirus pandemic. Puerto Rico declared a public health emergency this spring, with more dengue cases reported in the first 5 months of 2024 than all of last year. Public health officials are bracing for the virus to crop up in more temperate regions, including the southernmost portions of the United States. Last week, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warned of an increased risk of dengue infections in the United States, urging clinicians to stay on alert for the disease when treating feverish patients who have traveled to places with dengue transmission. But even as human-made warming spurs cases to historic highs, dengue remains one of the world's most neglected tropical diseases, according to the World Health Organization. 3 out of 4 cases are mild or asymptomatic, making the illness difficult to track. And because the virus comes in 4 varieties or serotypes, natural immunity after one illness does not protect against future infections with other types. What makes dengue unusual is that the risk of severe complications may actually increase with sequential infections of a different type. There is no cure for the virus, which in severe cases can lead to plasma leaking from veins, internal bleeding, organ failure, and in rare instances, death. Unlike other illnesses, vaccination is complicated. Few options are available, and few people know about them. The only vaccine available in the United States is for children 9 to 16 years old who have already been infected with dengue, those most vulnerable to hospitalization, but it won't be available after 2026. The crisis in Puerto Rico is a warning sign for the rest of the United States. It shows how quickly an outbreak can metastasize in communities with fragile infrastructure, underfunded health systems, and temperatures that get hotter with each passing year. Without drastic action to control the virus and slow climate change, research suggests some 2 billion additional people across the globe could be at risk for dengue in the next 50 years. It has been more than a decade since Puerto Rico saw its last dengue outbreak. Though the virus is endemic in the territory and typically recurs every 5 to 7 years, that cycle was interrupted by the emergence of Zika, a closely related virus that tore through the island in 2016 and gave some cross-protection against dengue, and the isolation measures necessitated by the coronavirus. But the return of global travel, especially Caribbean cruises, brought thousands of tourists who had been exposed to dengue elsewhere, introducing strains that hadn't been dominant in Puerto Rico. The virus spread swiftly through the population of susceptible people, reaching Genesis in late May. The girl had been feverish for several days before she arrived at the hospital. Her doctor, Zurisadai Rivera Acosta, pressed on the girl's fingertip and saw it took longer than normal for the color beneath to return to pink, a sign of dehydration. More concerning, the doctor noted, she had begun vomiting and her count of blood platelets was low. Rivera admitted the girl to the hospital amid signs her condition was deteriorating. Genesis was one of 91 dengue cases reported in Puerto Rico that week, health department data show.